All right, welcome to the first of its kind, world-changing manufacturers network. Lisa Ryan has her ears to the ground and her heart in the game. Get ongoing education and new connections right here with Lisa and the Manufacturers Network. Buckle your seat, listen, and spread the word. Here's Lisa.
Hey, it's Lisa Ryan. Welcome to the Manufacturers Network podcast. I'm here today with Gareth Evans. Gareth is the CEO and founder of VECKTA, a platform and team of experts that accelerates and simplifies the deployment of on-site energy solutions for businesses globally. With 20 years of experience in the energy and resources sectors, he's an expert in microgrid and distributed energy planning and design, construction, and monitoring. So, Gareth, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Lisa. Excited.
Yay. Share with us a little bit about your background and what led you to doing what you do with VECKTA.
Yeah, it's been a very unique journey and one that has been very unplanned and unpredictable, but grew up Liverpool, England, always wanted to be a fast jet pilot with the Air Force, always hung out with the Army and Air Force cadets, loved geography, studied environmental science at university, but gap years were always encouraged in the UK. So I took out gap years before and after university. I traveled and did charity work throughout South America the first year, and then trained with the Shaolin monks and traveled throughout Asia in my second gap year. The Air Force paid for me to go through university, studied environmental science. Air Force decided they didn't have enough planes. They had too many pilots, so they didn't hire me at the end of the university, and it worked out really well. I went on to travel the world, got a job as an environmental consultant in the early days in Calgary, Canada. And that really brought me into the energy industry. I supported oil and gas industry players around the world to assess, design, deploy facilities all around the world, with a particular emphasis on helping them manage their liabilities. And for me, the concept of VECKTA was originated through my time in Iraq. I was supporting ExxonMobil and others to move into Iraq after the Second Gulf War. And I got to see firsthand what it takes to extract the energy reserves that we need to feed our energy hungry lifestyles while the local populace was surviving on 2 hours of power a day. And it's impossible to live a life, run a business without clean, reliable, affordable power. And so that became my mission. And fast forward 10 years and having done that as a consultant, then decided to launch VECKTA in 2019 to really support businesses around the world to really achieve cheaper, more reliable, more sustainable energy outcomes, because that's truly the way to differentiate your business today.
So is it an acronym, or what does VECKTA stand for?
Yeah, I love the question. It comes from the word vector, which means to provide magnitude, direction, and scale to an object. And so that's what we're bringing to the energy transition. VECKTA is a play on that. Obviously, trying to create a business name these days, get the social media handles, you have to be a bit creative, but it was quite thoughtful. I'm wearing the logo here, and so anyone seeing the video, the V is let's out with the old, the A is an up arrow for in with the new, and then the green E is for more sustainable solutions. And then we have 3 core values within the business: challenge limits, adapt purposefully, empower co-creation, which are the 3 lines of the E. Yeah, that's who we are. That's where it comes from. And yeah, it's a nice way to set the frame.
And you described it beautifully, since this is audio only, but I like what it stands for. And I also know with the company name of Grategy, which is also a registered trademark, because I needed to get creative. I know exactly what you're coming from with the made up words.
Yeah.
So what exactly is energy transition, and what do you think the future looks like?
Yeah, super interesting time for manufacturing executives and managers. The reality is that we are all today passive consumers of energy. So we rely on our utility and our central power grid to provide us with energy. And up until now, it's worked reasonably well. We turn on our facility, the lights come on, the equipment fires up, and it runs. And bills haven't been too horrendous. And up until probably 5 or so years ago, people weren't talking about sustainability. Now, as manufacturing leaders, we are being expected to produce more product, more reliably, more consistently. We're expected to do it at lower costs. And we're expected to do it in a cleaner way in order to win or retain the contracts that we have, because the supply chain is demanding that of us. The problem is the central grid is 100 years old now, and it's becoming very old and decrepit. And so it's harder to maintain. And so utilities are having to spend billions and billions of dollars trying to keep it operating for us. And the only way they can do that is passing the costs onto us as the consumers, the business leaders. And so what we're seeing across particularly the US, but around the world, is energy costs are increasing quite significantly. Reliability is reducing. The cost of outages in the US alone cost our industry $150 billion in 2022. And so these are the pain points that as leaders we face, because energy makes up to 40% of our operating costs today. And so if that's going up 3, 5, 10, in some cases 30 to 50% year on year, and it's never ever going to go down, this is a very unique challenge, but a huge opportunity. And I think what excites me the most is, for the people listening to your podcast, this can either be seen as a risk and a threat, or it could be seen as a way to truly differentiate their own personal careers, but as well their businesses. Because if you do it right, you can be more profitable and sustainable, and that allows you to achieve lots of hard benefits as well as soft benefits along the way.
Wow. I think about the energy grid, and two of the things come to mind. Number one, because I live in Northeast Ohio, the great blackout of 2014, which actually started, I believe, right in Northeast Ohio in that area up there. And thankfully, I was in California at the time, so I got to watch the whole thing. But then last summer, I believe, in Texas, with all the not being able to sustain the power grid. So I think it's something that we don't really pay attention to as much as we should. And like you said, these things are 100 years old. And until there's a problem with them, we just assume that they're always going to work.
Exactly. You're spot on. And I think outages are something that we think are going to happen to everyone else and never to us. And to your point, they're happening more and more frequently. The severity and frequency of them are increasing all the time. Texas was a great example. Winter cold snap, people were out of power for a week. Samsung lost $350 million worth of production costs because their plant was down the whole time. And this is not uncommon. In California, it's wildfires. In the Northeast, it's winter storms. And so the grid just can't handle these severe weather events. And so we have another opportunity. We can actually produce and store energy right at our facilities with things like solar, batteries, wind turbines, gas generators. We can now take control of our own energy future and manage the costs, have costs that are locked in for decades versus running the gauntlet of how much are these things going to go up. When there is an outage, we can disconnect from the grid and we can run our critical infrastructure. And by doing all of that, we can actually reduce emissions at the same time, which is unlocking a whole new market in of itself. And I think what many people also don't realize, Lisa, is that the grid is designed for our energy loads today. And now with increased electrification of our facilities, so more people are switching from gas boilers to electric boilers, from diesel fleets to electric fleets, they're installing heat pumps, and then combine that with more and more data centers being built because AI is now taking off and we need more capacity. The grid is not designed for this increased energy demand. And we're seeing more and more businesses also come into us saying, I want to build a new manufacturing facility, but the utility is telling me there isn't any spare energy and I'm going to have to wait between 5 and 10 years to get access to energy. And so the only way they can build these facilities is to actually think about their other options. So a very interesting time.
Wow. So what role does the government policies and regulations play in shaping this energy transition?
Like top down, the Inflation Reduction Act is incredible. I think the world looks to the US in envy of what's been achieved there. Obviously, the name doesn't reflect what it's actually doing. But for your listeners, the opportunity is for every dollar you spend on deploying an energy system, you can get between 30 and 50 cents on the dollar back in tax credits, which is huge. So you're almost able to get a system for half price. So incentives like that are playing a massive role in the federal government realizes that we don't have the right infrastructure to support now the reshoring of more manufacturing, the development of our industry. And so in order to get ahead of that, we need to think about how can we shift from this central grid to more distributed on-site energy assets. And this is to counter the counter of that, which is the utilities are set up in a way that they are monopolistic in nature. The people we buy power from, they have no competition. And for every dollar they spend, they get a guaranteed 8 to 12% profit back on that. And so what they want to do is spend more money deploying big projects. And so they're not incentivized to think about us as the consumer and how can they save us money. It's how can they deploy as much money as possible, because for every dollar they spend, they get profit on that. And so that's where there's a misalignment, is the utilities are not incentivized to think about our best interests. But on the industry side, we need to absolutely be thinking about how do we be more lean, mean, efficient, cost-effective, profitable. And so this is the balancing act. And so there are great incentives there. There's great mechanisms to take advantage of, but we have to fight a bit of the status quo mentality around this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah, and you mentioned things like AI. So how are you seeing that the rise of digital technologies and data analytics are transforming the way that businesses are managing and optimizing their energy use?
Yeah, this is a super interesting question, because I think the reality is most business leaders have never thought about energy. You brought this up before. It's never been something they've had to worry about. Now, businesses are having to think about it. Like, you can't just have your energy bill on auto pay because you may be paying double what you paid this time last year. The key step is to actually identify, where am I at today, and actually get that data. Most businesses don't even have the data around how much energy am I consuming, where across my portfolio facilities am I consuming it, what's it costing me, what's my emission profile. So the first key step is, let's make sure we know where we're at today. Let's set a plan for where we want to get to. Do we want to reduce costs? Do we want to reduce emissions? Do we want to have a more resilient operational facility? And once you understand them, then you can look at your options. And we call it like you've got 4 primary options. You can either go with energy efficiency, reduce your energy consumption needs as much as possible. And you can do that through electrification of your facility, through making sure you're managing heat loss, things like that, that many manufacturing plants have already gone on the journey of doing. That's great. Let's reduce our energy costs as much as possible by reducing our demand. Then what we excel in is deploying on-site generation and storage facilities. So what system will meet your specific business needs and objectives? And so we're not trying to sell any product in the market. We represent the buyer's best interests, and we help them analyze technically and financially what is the optimal system for my needs. And maybe there isn't a system, and we very often tell our customers, don't waste your money. It's not the right time. Technology is not in the right place. Your utility power is already cheap enough to keep meeting your needs. But we design the system for them. So we'll recommend this much solar, this much storage. Maybe you need some EV chargers. Maybe you need a gas turbine. Here's what it'll cost you. Here's the people who would finance it if you don't want to spend any money on it. Here's the 20-year cash flow analysis. Here's your payback period, IRR, NPV. So we give them the full financial analysis. And then we actually get them quotes from the best suppliers in the market to then buy the system. Most business leaders don't know how to ask the market to quote them an energy system. How do they manage their risk? How do they ensure they're getting the best deal? And so once we've done all that and we've deployed the system, then there's lots we can do with the data coming off that to constantly optimize it, manage it, make sure it's meeting the business needs. And then the last two, which most businesses turn to as a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, were buying what we call off-site power purchase agreements, where someone builds a mega solar farm thousands of miles away. It generates clean energy. On paper, you buy that energy, but you're not actually buying the physical energy. So that's being called out for greenwashing. And the other one is buying renewable energy credits. So I emit X amount of tons of carbon. My customer is telling me to win their contract, I need to be net zero. I'm going to go and buy some credits over here to offset my emissions. And then I can tell them that I'm developing my product more sustainably. But that is also being called out for greenwashing and it's just not good for your business, because your now energy costs are going up and you're trying to buy these carbon credits, which are also going up in price. So you're now getting hit twice, and that's not advisable. Ideally, it's energy efficiency, on-site energy, and then whatever components of your needs are left, think about those last two options.
So when it comes to efficiency, and you mentioned a few of them, but what are the main areas that manufacturers could focus on as a priority to start with to really start reducing those so they're not greenwashing?
Yeah. So on the energy efficiency side, it's great. It ranges from literally behavioral changes. How are the people in the plant operating the facility? What times a day are key pieces of equipment operating? Is there the ability to run a very heavy energy load demand at a different time of day when utility power is cheaper? How can we increase our heating and cooling? How can we switch out gas boilers for electric boilers? There's multiple ways in which businesses can go about that. The energy efficiency side of the equation has probably been around the last 15, 20 years. Most people have done the LED light switch out. It's the low-hanging fruit, but then there's lots of ways you can continue to expand on that. And we typically see that facilities can reduce their demand by anywhere between 10 and 30 or so percent. So it really helps the bottom line in terms of managing those costs. And there's lots of players in the market who want to actually come in and finance those solutions, pay for the capital costs, and then share in the savings with your listeners. So you can either front the money yourself and reap the benefits, or you can go down the route of having someone else do it all for you, taking all the pressure off you, allowing you to continue to focus on running your business. But then there's a revenue share, let's say.
Okay. And so that goes into it with the investors in the financial community. What are some of the key trends that you're seeing that they're bringing to the table in putting together some of those plans, working with manufacturers?
Yeah, the most exciting mechanism, I'd say, for manufacturers in the market is what we call an energy as a service contract. So today you pay a utility bill to your utility, and as we've discussed, you have no control over what those costs look like. We're seeing some of our customers in Northern California, their bills are going to go up 80% this year with peak demand charges. So how do you run your business when your costs are so volatile? What you're able to do is someone will come in and finance the development of an energy solution for your facility. And that can be, as we've said, it can be solar, it can be batteries, it can be fuel cells, it can be gas or diesel turbines. We'll design the system, we'll put it into the market, and then there's amazing developers and financial products that will come to you and they'll fully front all the capital. They'll build the facility, they'll operate it, they'll maintain it, and they'll sell you energy at a fixed price back for anywhere between 10 and 20 years. So from an operational planning perspective, from a risk management perspective, from a cost optimization perspective, you're locked in. And it's amazing. And you essentially just switch out one utility bill for another. And that other entity is responsible for making sure you get the energy you were promised at the right time, at the right price. And what's not to like about that? You get to get a solution that you have to pay nothing for. Obviously, you need to be a viable business. You need to have been around for several years. You need to have positive cash flows. But I think the opportunities are huge. On the flip side of that, for businesses that are cash flow positive or have big tax burdens, then they can self-finance these assets and then they can take advantage of the tax credits we talked about before. Being able to get 30 to 50 cents on the dollar back in tax credits becomes a very attractive tax mechanism for the financial listeners.
You said earlier that the manufacturers have a hard time building the new plants because there's not enough energy and they might have to wait 5 or 10 years to do that. How are these new plants then being built?
Yeah, we just looked at one for an oil and gas company, actually. So they're building a new gas processing train and the utilities turned around to them and said, we can't provide you the power that you need. And so what we're able to do is help design them an actual gas turbine because they have access to gas at their facility. We looked at all the different technologies, but the optimal financial and resilient solution for them was a major gas turbine, which is going to start at 15 megawatts in size, and then it can be doubled when they build the second train. What's super exciting about this is what it would have cost them to buy utility power. Over the life of the asset, they'll save $250 million. They get to build the asset today versus having to wait 5 or plus more years, and they get to control what they pay. And so you can imagine the opportunity cost loss of not being able to build that facility. And then even if you did build it 5 years from now, not knowing what the utility prices would be at that time, this way they're able to get ahead of that, build their own facility, start running their processes, and saving a lot of money in that.
And you mentioned the G word of gas. We hear so much about clean energy and electricity.
Yep.
So where does gas fall into that with clean energy and sustainability?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Lisa. And I think what we prioritize as a business is ensuring that we develop the most profitable and sustainable energy outcomes. So we're not here to say to any of your listeners, like, you have to go and build a fully renewable energy solution, because they may have a facility that is extremely energy intensive. They may not have enough available space for solar. They may not even have good solar potential because they're in a very cold, harsh climate with bad solar potential. So we look at all these variables. There's thousands and thousands of variables that impact the optimal energy system, ranging from cost of fuel, utility tariffs, location, solar radiance, wind speed, the cost of construction. The list goes on and on. And so we bring all of those requirements into the product, and we run the analysis on behalf of the customer. And then we recommend back, here is the optimal system for your specific needs. And if that is a gas turbine, then so be it. Very often a gas turbine is actually cleaner than the utility power that they are buying, because in many states we're still using coal, we're still using heavy gas. So if you deploy a gas turbine, maybe you combine that with other technologies, maybe you don't. We help you make the best decision for your business needs in that moment. Gas is cleaner than coal. Gas is definitely what we call a transitionary fuel. There are other ways we will be able to use gas in the future. Fuel cells already process gas and can generate energy that way. Great thing about fuel cells is you can run them on gas today, and then in the future you might be able to run them on hydrogen without having to replace the equipment. So for us, it's about, we can't sacrifice our economies, our standards of living. We have to build the right systems for the needs now, but we represent our customers over the life of these facilities. And so maybe 5 years from now, the person who deployed the gas turbine, it may be optimal to supplement that with batteries or a wind turbine. We'll proactively advise them as they go on this journey. And so we're constantly proactively bringing them the right data, intelligence, insights, and decisions to make. You'll get a return on investment and pay this thing off in 2 years if you invest now. That's the sort of intelligence we want to provide business leaders so they can act with confidence. Today, they're acting from a place of uncertainty or a place of fear. And we want to put them in control of the process and give them the education, the awareness, the data, the insights, because today they're being asked to make decisions almost on emotion. They've never had the education to know what is possible. And we don't want them to have to go and hire very expensive management consultants that are going to charge them millions of dollars to get a glossy report. We want to actually drive action and outcome.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think about, I'm in, Northeast Ohio, where we have 68 days of sun per year, approximately. So solar is probably just not really in our future.
And that's the great thing about it, Lisa, is like, we have these like emotional expectations in our mind, but until we put it in the system, and it can still be cloudy out, but we'll still actually generate pretty good solar. And so we're actually seeing solar systems being deployed in Ohio, in New York, in New Jersey, like places that we would never expect. But when you put the analytics in and you create the framework, it's very interesting to actually see what the optimal solution ends up being. And often we're surprised and pleasantly, but that's what's exciting about it, is how do we allow people to remove the emotion from it and the preconceived ideas that we all have. Batteries are too expensive. Solar isn't going to work for me. Sustainability is going to come at the expense of profitability. These are all things that we've heard over the years. and they're all wrong. And let's make sure that we test what is actually possible.
Wow. That's good news to hear, because I had a completely different expectation of our ability to really harness solar here. But it is a bright, beautiful day right here today in Cleveland. As we're getting to the end of our time together, what is a question that, because we covered a lot, and in my understanding or lack of understanding of this, there may be some things that I should have asked you that didn't. So is there anything else that you'd like to share that we didn't talk about that you feel is really important in this area?
Yeah, I just encourage your listeners to think about this as a huge opportunity. I think the businesses that get this right will truly differentiate themselves for decades to come. I think this is like a once in a generational opportunity to actually really make your business stand out, because there are not too many levers these days where we can have very significant impacts on our business. We've got to the point of incremental improvements and optimizations. We are now seeing situations where businesses are saving hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars a year in energy cost savings. So straight away, we're operationally more cost efficient. We can use that money elsewhere, or we can invest it in more of these solutions, save more money. We increase the resilience of our operations so we can meet our production requirements. We don't have to worry about downtime. We don't have to worry about damaging equipment, the safety of employees. And then from a sustainability perspective, those that proactively get ahead of this, the way the whole supply chain is going, we will win and retain more contracts. We'll attract the best employees. We'll attract the cheapest capital. We'll get the best stock price. There are so many knock-on benefits, and we can market and brand this. We can use it in many positive ways. And so I'd say, don't be a passive consumer. Don't be scared of it. Embrace it, get after it. And for your own personal career and for your business, you can truly stand out, make a name for yourself. And at the same time, you get to do right by our communities and society, because if we all do this in a really positive way, it generates great outcomes for all of us.
Absolutely. If somebody did want to continue the conversation with you and find out more about what VECKTA can do to help them, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, website is an amazing resource. So VECKTA.com, VECKTA.com. We've got our own podcast called Renewable Rides, which kind of breaks this down and tries to make energy interesting, enjoyable, engaging, simplified. I encourage people to check that out. Loads of good blog resources. And then for me personally, very active on LinkedIn. So Gareth Evans on LinkedIn. Look up VECKTA, Gareth Evans, and you'll find me.
All right. Gareth, it has been a pleasure having you on the show today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
I'm Lisa Ryan, and this is the Manufacturers Network Podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Manufacturers Network Podcast. Do me a favor and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can grow this network and connect more fantastic folks just like you. You can either send your buddies to the website at manufacturers-network.com or share the Manufacturers Network podcast on your LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or wherever you and your industry friends hang out. The bigger and faster we grow the network, the stronger and deeper the community we'll all have. Thanks again, and I appreciate you.